out there and do the real work. So, with that being said, let me look at the chat right quick, right before we get off into it, because I'm telling y'all, this is about to be explosive. This is about to be explosive. Let me see what we got. Let me see what we got here, because all right. Sovereign Energy said, I made it. That's what's Harry Lee said, greetings and grand rising, Crystallogians. Okay, that's what's up. So what's up, Sister Soul Man Radio? We will be doing a follow-up with Sister Soul Man Radio. Very powerful. There's gonna be a powerful segment. We're gonna be talking about some things. I didn't, if you could drop that link in there, Sister Soul. I got the link from you, but I didn't have an opportunity to put everything together. I was rushing to put this together. All right. Okay. So, all right. This is the thing. Let's go back to this video right quick. Let me prep it right quick. Before we go back to it. Let's go back to this video right quick. All right. So this was the world's first video showing the moment salt crystals are formed. So let's play this just a little bit.
Substance in our everyday lives, ranging from its use on icy roads to food seasoning.
Now, remind you, like we said before, let's key in on the things that are going to cement our outlook, this new outlook. This is salt, brothers and sisters. This is what we're seeing. This is salt. So we went through this. We're not going to show too much of this video because, like, if you want to see this video in its entirety or as much as that we've showed in order to bring out our points, then you have to take a look at the previous segment. So, we're just going to go through it to show, for her to bring out the key points, okay?
Looking at salt through a large magnifying glass, we see that the crystals are cuboid in shape. Salt consists of regular cuboid crystals of chloride ions and
so it consists of chloride ions and sodium ion crystals. These ions, they can call them ions, they can call them sodium ions, chloride ions, but like they said, at the base level, they are crystals. I can change its first and middle name, but it's their crystals is what you have to understand. Now, as we fast forward, and we showed you as they conducted this experiment through a carbon tube and they extracted the water out of the tube. What happens was the crystals became larger. All right, now this is another point that you had to take out of this that I didn't mention, but hopefully you were able to deduce this from your high level analytical skills. If you see that this carbon nanotube is where it was encased in, and they were slowly extracting the water out of it, vaporizing the water, and these crystals got larger. You must understand, with that being table salt, this is table salt, brothers and sisters, this is what it looks like in your blood. And you can see that, remind you what we said, they learn these things about salt. What actually keeps that electric energy inside your red blood cells. Okay, or around your cells, that electrical activity. That's why it's key. It needs to be in your diet. This crystal, okay, generating that sort of electricity. They found out about it, and what did they do? They put it in absolutely all of your foods, spiked it. Okay, especially within the so-called Black community or African-American community, right? And then they told us that we were at the top of the height of atherosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries. Now we see why these arteries getting hardened. We see that the especially accelerated aging is nothing more than the hardening of the body, or the crystallizing of the body. This is important. That's why, like I said, this is so essential to see how we, to rethink how we see ourselves in this framework, simply because now from this, only conclusion you can come to is that they had this information all the time. What did they do with it? Did they inform you? Did they enlighten you? No, they weaponized this information. They went into their labs, they cooked up some artificial foods and stuff, and you, with your short range thinking, not you, the FOF squad, but the media and the public or the masses at large out there, said, oh, well, it's all about the money. It's about the convenience food, and it's about their bottom line. No, they know exactly what all this is. It all boils down to crystals crystallizing or making bonds. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it ionic bonding. You can call it molecular bonding, covalent bonding, but these are how crystals bond. But the nature is crystallization. And then obviously, in order to garner even more clarity, the video that we'll look at will do that without a shadow of a doubt. Because unlike the FOF squad, I know the vast majority of the people have to listen to the Blanco say it in order for it to be legitimate. All right. So that's what we get from that. And that's so important. Okay. And so also,
this is just a short video to send people over to the channel.
Also,
because me and the brother will be going live in about another hour and a half. He'll be coming over so we can do part two to some things I went over earlier this week. Definitely go in and support the channel. You can go over there and join in or stay here, either way, until I conclude and go over Chase. Appreciate you joining.
So we discovered, how we already know that everything is this, this large crystal framework in terms of our existence or the natural matrix. Okay. And so we realized like these large crystals, we identified them as mountains. We established that the Caucasus Mountains is where they were imprisoned or where they were kept or where they originated. There's many myths, but all myths lead to the same reality, which they're from a different crystal makeup. Now, sidebar. One of the things that's so important to clear up are the terms that we use in the conscious community. This is essential because so often we use terms, we use them interchangeably, they lose their meaning, etc. And many times this is one of the reasons why we agree to disagree with people or we just argue, because we have no real clear stance ourselves. So many people use the term Caucasians, but if you ask a person what's the root meaning of the term Caucasus or Caucasian or the Caucasus Mountains, be like, I don't know. And it's essential for you to know these things because this is how you're framing your worldview through these terms, these ideas, these concepts. Okay? So we know that when we talk about the Caucasus Mountains, we look at a region. Right? These Caucasus Mountains is what separate Europe and Asia. It's its dividing line. And the Caucasus Mountain is bordered by, in the east and the west, on the west side is bordered by the Black Sea. On the right side is bordered by the Caspian Sea. Now, you don't really need to know too much about the Black Sea. As you can see, there's some negative connotations already with the term black, and we know this because this is how the Blanco operates. He did this to us for all people across the globe to see black in a negative way, right? And so, but we understand that there's a Black Sea, a Yellow Sea, a White Sea, and the Yellow Sea is named after it's I think like it's like some silt or whatever that makes it kind of yellowish. The White Sea is named after like the snow in the ice that's on the sea. And then you have the Red Sea that's named after like the cyanobacteria. It lets off like a reddish color, but black. The black name comes from the fact that if at its deepest point, especially, I think the sea gets about 150 meters deep, but at the bottom there's no oxygen. There's death. That's why they called it the Black Sea. The so-called Turks supposedly gave it that name because obviously it had different names, but they called it the Black Sea because of death. Nothing grows at the bottom and stuff. It's nothing but death at the bottom. All right. And then on the right side, we're going to look at something. We're going to look at an article because this is important. Watch what I'm building right here, brothers and sisters. Watch what I'm building. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Watch what I'm building. Give me 1 second. Let me cue it right quick.
Yes, brother. You guys can go over there. Tufu, he always spitting, bro.
Okay.
He'll be back over here at 8 in about an hour and a half. So I'm playing this prelude until he gets over here, and we continue with part 2. You guys can know.
What is the Caspian Sea? Is the Caspian Sea a lake? All right. This is from the World Atlas. Okay, about the Caspian Sea. All right. And it says the Caspian Sea a lake. It says, going by the definition of a sea, the Caspian Sea is a lake and not a sea, as it is an enclosed water body without any direct outlet to the ocean. However, 5.5 million years ago, it was part of the ancient Parathethys Sea and got landlocked as a result of tectonic uplift and sea level fall. Hence, the seafloor of the Caspian Sea is composed of oceanic basalt and not continental granite. The Caspian Sea is also massive and form waves like the sea along its shores. All right, so this is important. A lot of blah, 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 but the reason why I told you guys this, let me reduce this, turn this mic. I told you guys this because, okay, on one side you have a sea that represents death. On the other side, you have the Caspian Sea, and it has this basaltic or volcanic type of energy. It enclosed itself because we've already determined, you've seen this through the small experiment that was conducted. Anytime water leaves, the surrounding environment gets crystallized. You see, or it becomes, the Blanco calls it desertification, but desertification is with sand. Sand is nothing but crystals. So when water leaves, crystals form. Water has to be in its perfect amounts. You'll see that the Blanco is telling you, in other words, that the earth is crystallized. Am I telling you we're running out of water, fresh water? Because don't get misled by thinking that fresh water doesn't have its certain amount of salt. It has salinity, but its salinity or salt is not as big as the ocean's salt, or not as much. Its volume is not as much. All right. And that's what's talked about in that article. When you look it up in the Caspian Sea, it has about 1/4 or 1/3 of the salinity of an ocean. Okay. So fresh water does not mean that it does not contain any salt. It just doesn't contain as much salt as the ocean. And now you have also been able to build on this, because you now know that this salt, as we've seen from that small experiment conducted in the video we've just shown, is a crystal. So now you know that the ocean is full of crystals. And since you know that these sodium crystals are in all bodies of water, when the sun hits the water, when you see the shimmering, you see the sunlight hitting crystals. Okay, this is what you need to know. All right, so this is the point. The point being that this caucus means, let's go to the etymology of this, right? Let's go to the etymology of this, because this is important. Because we got so many people walking around talking about this, but you know, you got to understand who and what you're dealing with. You got to understand who and what you're dealing with. So let me prep this right quick. Hold on one second, brothers and sisters. All right. Okay. Caucasian, of pertaining to the Caucasus Mountains, applied to the white race by German anthropologist Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, who was in his pioneering treatise on anthropology distinguished mankind into 5 races. We already know about that. Okay, but if you go up here, it shows you that it's it meant mountain, but it also translated into ice shining, white with snow. Now you know why a lot of these Blancos are so obsessed with snow. Remember, the snow, they came in crystal form. Remember, we talked to you about the movie The Guardians. Remember, with Jack Frost and all of that different stuff. Hold on. I showed you guys that, they're associated with the moon and these ice crystals. They're of a different crystal makeup. These mountains represent the ice crystal mountain. All right. This is their particular type of makeup. This is where their crystals operate at the highest level, is in colder weather, is when the earth has its crystal makeup at that, is at that crystal makeup. Okay. You see, so that's very important for you to understand and for you to know. You know what I'm saying? Because they're very aware of it. They're very aware of it. All right. So, now we know that these Caucasus Mountains are representative of their crystal makeup. So we also deduce that if the sun, from the article we brought out, that they said that our sun would turn into a white dwarf, which would be a crystal in the sky. If the sun would turn into a crystal, and we know that the Most High said that he created both luminaries as light, what do you think the moon is? Okay, let's not forget, let's not, like we said, compartmentalize our idea of this. We got to allow this to bleed or permeate into every area of our spiritual activity. We can't just see the sun as a crystal, water's good. Everything in this reality in the natural matrix was built on crystal formation. As again, because we're saying this word, I know it sounds a little foreign to a lot of people's ears, because this is not how they relayed this information to us. But stick with us, because without a shadow of a doubt, we're going to show you that not only do they know, they celebrate it. They're in reverence of it. They're in awe of it. And everything that they build up from then up until now has been about on the backs of this science. Aided by us, okay, as well, aided by us. So without any further ado, let's get into the most powerful video that we're ever going to see on crystallography. I want to preface this by 1976 Copyright Act, Section 107, allowances made for fair use for the purposes of commentary, criticism, news reporting, scholarship, education. But overall, here at the FOF squad, waking your ass up, all right? All right, so yeah, let's get this video cracking right quick. Let me prep it. Oh, this is gonna be powerful, y'all. You know I don't disappoint, and I'm saving. I just wanted to run through that, and I'm sorry if I ran through it too quick, but we've already dealt with a lot of this information. All right, so I want to get to the what I'm saying, the gist of this, because like we said before, look at the groundwork we've laid. Look how they established us as being pseudo, even in our own community. Even people who come up and talk this way, they're called pseudo, but yet Rosalind Franklin can send a UFO photo. They called it a UFO photo to her peers, right? And then they say, oh, well, we can use this. This is about as close as we're going to come to DNA. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this video. Very, very important and very, very powerful video. Hold on, let me cue it. All right. Okay. Let's go.
Be hanged.
So celebrating crystallography. Look at these months. Celebrating crystallography. Okay. Okay. The Bragg centenary. Centenary. I think that's how you say it, because I always want to add an extra A or E for some reason. Centenary. All right. 1913 to 2013. That word always plays tricks on me. Centenary. All right. All right. So 100 years of celebrating crystallography. Let's get into it. Now, look at the title, Seeing Things in a Different Light, How X-ray Crystallography Revealed. Remember, Revelation is apocalypse. That's why they say we're living in the end times. So much symbolism in this video. How X-ray crystallography revealed the structure of everything. Let's continue. Now look, hold on. You see these distinguished white folks? I'm gonna keep bringing this up. You see this distinguished white folks suits, they in tuxedos. Yet you got people like Rashad Jamal and everybody else who talk about this. Dr. Sabi, everybody pseudo. Everybody else who talk about this stuff from our community pseudo. But look what the Blanco do. He talking about it. Let's see what the Blanco got to say. Let's see.
On the 30th of April, 1852, Thomas Henry Huxley, one of my scientific heroes, walked through that door to give his first Friday evening discourse. His heart was beating like a sledgehammer, as is mine.
And look, we just gonna nitpick. Stay with me, because he's slow. Especially when you're dealing with European humor. You gotta, and this was an hour, and I watched every bit of the hour just for you guys, but you guys don't have to drudge through an hour. But we're gonna get to some key important parts and stuff. But he said some very important things, so we got to be able to catch it. And I want you to catch it in context. I just don't want to pick out sound bites so that somebody thinks that I'm trying to influence the way you perceive these things, right? So you're going to get the context, okay, as well. But let's let him continue and see what we come up with.
He wrote to his wife later, "I now know what it feels like to be going to be hanged." His nervousness, I think, was partly the fault of the audience. He continued in his letter, "The audience is a most peculiar one, at once the best and worst in London, such as tonight. The best and
okay, let's get it, because all them jokes is, man, it's just whack.
At the same time, as can men." But where I agree with Huxley, and I agree with him on many other topics as well, is in the choice of a profound subject. And I hope I have chosen a suitably deep subject for tonight. What I want to tell you about is the technique of X-ray crystallography, a technique that has a very famous and intimate relationship with this place.
So notice what he said. It has a very unique and intimate relationship with the world society. They've been through this, but he's going to talk about some of the history. Obviously, he's went through a little bit of it, right? But he talked about all of these individuals who are well respected and well renowned within the scientific community, but they started out with what we may have called, or what a lot of people call back in the day, pseudoscience. It was this idea that the world was built on crystals. These Blancos was peddling what I'm saying now, but they were peddling it to Blancos, and Blancos at the time didn't believe it. Okay, and they're going to show you how they took over the minds of scientists at the time in order for them to endorse this X-ray crystallography. And then he's going to show you how huge it's got. Oh, this is about to be off the chain.
Let's go. This deep. This is real deep.
We are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the invention of this method, which has shown us the world in unprecedented detail. And we're celebrating the centenary this year. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't really have the pull or the appeal in the public domain.
So, and like he said, this is gonna got the pool in the public domain. As you could also see in this video is this the World Institute has 1.45 almost 1.5 million subscribers. Almost 1.5 million subscribers. This video probably has like 10-20,000 views. You see what I'm saying? This is deep shit. But let's continue. We're gonna fast forward to the 4-minute mark. 4 minutes and 30 seconds, I believe, where I had the timestamp. Let's go.
For those problems. And I hope in doing so to sort of set the ball rolling in a popularization of the technique, because now that we're celebrating the centenary, it is a method.
Yeah, the centenary. That's how you say it.
Has really transformed all of the sciences. It relies on a rather beautiful piece of physics and mathematics, but it has informed.
It has transformed all the sciences. I'm sorry, I'm be stopping these things because I want you guys to understand exactly what's going on here. All right. Hold on. This clicking and stuff got things tripping right quick. I want to show me the times. Okay. Go ahead.
An acquaintance with the world at the molecular and atomic level, which was simply not appreciated prior to the turn of the 20th century. So I'm going to make you work a little bit hard a couple of times during this as I go through the theory, but I am not going to delve into all the gory details. I will spare you that, ladies and gentlemen. But I do want to tell you about how you use X-rays and how you use them in a very particular way. Now, from the very beginning, it was obvious that X-rays was a special kind of light because it could see through matter. And here you can see one of the very first, it wasn't quite a medical X-ray, I think it was more an experiment that Röntgen, who discovered X-rays in 1895, did not on his own hand, smartly, but on that of his fashionable wife. And what you can see is that the skin and soft tissue is largely transparent, because matter is mostly transparent or semi-transparent to X-rays. But the bone is slightly denser, it's got calcium atoms in it, and so it casts a shadow. And the ring, let's give Röntgen a bit of credit and assume that it's gold, which with an atomic number of 79 is very electron dense, and so it scatters X-rays and casts a darker shadow. So what's happening here is that the electrons in the atoms and molecules of Anna Bertha's hand are scattering X-rays out of the beam, and so it attenuates the transmitted beam, and so you see the shadow. But rather than being a solid shadow, we see that it's semi-transparent because the X-rays are very penetrating. So
basically what you're dealing with, like we had already exposed with the concepts of X-ray, when they discovered this type of light, they understood that light is what brings about dimensions. We see ourselves, our full body, but using X-ray diffraction, using X-ray technology, which you see the Blanco being totally obsessed with. And I read a passage out of Lynn McTaggart's book, What Doctors Don't Tell You, how obsessed they became with this technology, that this was how they were able to peer inside the human body. One of the things that we also need to bring alongside that thought process, which will help to bring us even more clarity, is understanding that, when it comes to these levels, when it comes to levels of light, that's showing you how crucial it is, and that it's not just a flesh and blood concept. Because when you understand that light is what brings about these dimensions, this is when you get these concepts of light and what people a lot of times associate with pseudoscience when they talk about let your body be light. But the Blanco is showing you through the technology that he's been able to acquire, obviously through thievery for the most part, that he's been able to use it to gain a higher understanding of light. And so with this X-ray technology, he's like, man, this is a very powerful weapon. This is what puts us in this Star Wars sort of situation, because this is what allows us to peer or get a glimpse into how we can manipulate these crystals. Now, if you notice, that X is very similar to something else that I'm going to bring up later on in this video. We're going to fast forward and stuff because we're going to try to get through this. But I think I'm going to let this run to the 7-minute and 10 mark because he says something crucial. But he's going to pick it up, and we're going to make sure he picks it up because these Blancos love to be boring. They don't try to. It's not their fault. But, this is one of the reasons why in school we didn't really connect with this stuff because of how they relay this information. They know that shit boring the way that they be doing this shit, bro. So let's get into it.
Let's think about the scattering that's happening and that explains that X-ray pattern, that X-ray shadow. So X-rays, we now know, is a special kind of light. It just has a very short wavelength, and it effectively consists of an oscillating electric and magnetic field. Here we're just showing the electric field, and it's about to hit an electron. And when an electric field hits an electron, a charged particle, it causes that electron to oscillate up and down. And an oscillating electron will itself emit radiation of the same wavelength, and so it emits X-rays, and in fact, almost in all directions are X-rays emitted. And so
the gist of it is that another part of this X-ray crystallography, this is what's so deep, y'all. They figure out how much power you have as a so-called quote unquote race of people or your beings. That's what they've been trying to do with this X-ray crystallography. This is about to get deep. So they showing you that we'll shoot a beam of light at an electron, and the electron will stop and begin oscillating. Okay, and then it will then start pushing out its light. And from this scattered light, from this shadow that it puts out, because they never really see the electron, they see its shadow. They see the shadow that it puts out. And then they do some mathematical formulas. Then they come about with the shape. They literally use the dark so they can find out about the light. Woo, this is so cold. They literally use the dark so that they can find out about the light. But let's let this Blanco continue to keep articulating this stuff because it's about to get deep.
The transmitted beam.
Let's go to the 8:10 mark right quick.
And what this technique can do, because of the penetrating power of the X-rays, it shows us the interior structure of things.
Because of the penetrating power of the X-ray, as I was just telling you, it shows you the interior structures of things, the interior structure of things, its characteristics, how it's going to behave, how much power it has. Okay, now that we know this, let's pause because we got a very important document to show you guys. Very important document. Okay, race correction and the X-ray machine, the controversy over increased radiation doses for Black Americans in 1968. This is in 1968. Remember, now you didn't get an opportunity because I fast forwarded, and like I said, if you want to take a look at that video in its entirety, the one that I'm showing you presently, you got this resource. You can look at its entirety. But in the beginning, he's telling you that they're coming to these declarations, or they're coming to these revelations about X-ray crystallography in the early 20th century. For those of you who don't know, that's the early 1900s. Okay, early 1900s. So by 1968, this is what they're doing. Look at what they're doing with X-ray crystallography, okay, or X-ray technology. All right. On May 23rd, 1968, Howard Goldman, director of the New York Bureau of X-ray Technology, acknowledged that X-ray technicians routinely exposed Black patients to doses of radiation that were higher than those white patients received. This practice, which adhered to guidelines from X-ray machine manufacturers, may have been widespread in the 1960s. Senate hearings held that month, as political unrest rocked the country, prompted public outcry and led to calls from state and federal officials to end the practice. Yet in the 21st century, despite growing interest in the problems of race and racism in medicine, race adjustment of X-rays has received little attention. It's important to understand the origins of this practice, its rationales, its possible harms, and related controversies. The history shows how assumptions about biologic differences between Black and white people, this is important. I'm going to repeat this. The history shows how assumptions about biologic differences between Black and white people affected the theory and practice of medicine in the United States in ways that it may have harmed patients. Why did I repeat this statement? Because most Black people are under the impression that these Blancos are ignorant. Most Black people think that these white boys out here in their lab sitting up here trying to impose their will upon the science. No, they know what you are, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. It's not that they don't know what they're doing and then they go in their lab and create something and then you just become like a guinea pig. No, they know exactly what you are. This is the point. This is the point. Because, listen, as we scroll down, we're going to continue. We're going to continue. Racialization of the X-ray. Okay. Ideas about racial differences in bone and skin thickness appeared in the 19th century. and remained widespread throughout the 20th. So when they first got hold of this, and then we're going to tell you why. Theodore Watson's 1863 Introduction to Anthropology asserted, for instance, that the skeleton of the Negro is heavier, the bones thicker. Such claims reflected both beliefs about behaviors attributed to black people, e.g. violence, in the interest of white scientists and slave owners who justify slavery. Once again, this Blanco's off. How do we know the Blanco is off? This Blanco sitting up here telling you that the skeleton of the Negro is heavier, the bones are thicker. So, bitch, why we run faster and jump higher? It ain't got nothing to do with no skeleton bones being heavier and thicker. He knows that calcium is a metal, calcium is crystals, and if the skeleton is mostly made of calcium and collagen, which is also another crystal, he's saying that your crystals are heavier. And we're going to substantiate that without a shadow of a doubt. But we've already really done that in our previous videos. But now you're seeing that they think that ignorance is what birthed racism. You're different and I'm scared of you. No, nigga, I'm scared of you because I know what you are. That's why I'm scared of you. Okay? As the ideas persisted, even as context changed. Nearly a century later, in 1959, an Atlas of Normal Radiographic Anatomy described the skull bones of black people as thicker and denser than those of white people. Okay, let's continue on. It says the belief that black people have denser bones, more muscle, or thicker skin led radiologists and technicians to use higher radiation exposure during X-ray procedures. Okay, it said that a physician in 1896 asserted that black being perfectly opaque, black skin would offer some resistance to cathode rays. A 1905 review explained how the skin of the Negro offers more resistance to the X-rays than non-pigmented cuticle. This resistance made it difficult to get a good skiograph of a Negro's spine. The larger surface, exposed abdomen and back, contains so much pigment that a good deal of X-ray energy is lost. The New York Evening World described a celebrated black boxer with a skull that was, quote unquote, almost impregnable. It took the utmost skill of Joseph Clobber, the celebrated electrician and Roentgen ray operator, to get a picture of the interior workings of this man's skull. So it showed you. Now, this is some crazy stuff. Now, let me marginalize this before we go back into the main stuff. So now you're seeing that, okay, while this Blanco in the World Society talking about X-ray crystallography in the leaps and bounds that they're making, notice how he's talking early 1900s. These Blancos in here working with physics, particles, all this different stuff. And you're going to sit up here and tell me now all of a sudden he gets dumb when he goes into his hospitals? This is what led to medical apartheid. This is what led to the eugenics movement and all this different stuff, because they were already aware of what you were. And they had to strike, and they had to strike while the iron was hot. Is what you need to understand. The first thing was already taken care of. They took over the crystals or the natural framework or the natural matrix. That's by taking over the land. All right, took over the food and then canceled out the food, because like I told you, if you can't take the sun, you can't eat the crystals that come from the sun. So they had to create the artificial framework that included making synthetic crystals. All right, and all the while they're studying you, because remember, as I told you, the most important crystal is the human crystal. Remember, we talked about plasma. Okay, the most important crystal is the human crystal. Okay, so he's spending time trying to shoot X-rays through you to figure out what your DNA looks like. Remember, in the 1950s, this Blanco, look at the dates. Now, this is why I brought this information up. In the 1950s, he told you he could see what DNA looked like through X-rays. But yet in this article, he's saying in the 1960s, that he couldn't even get through your skin with X-rays. Man, I am killing you niggas.
I love when he say that shit.
That's why I told you to be careful of running around with Blanco science, parading around as if it's truth. Using a compartmentalized thought, parading around as if it is a holistic worldview. This Blanco ain't told you nothing but lies. Ain't told you nothing but lies. Let's go back to this video, because I am killing, man. I'm about to keep, we about to keep going. We ain't even started yet. Let's bring it back up. Hold on, let me cue it.
And it does so not just at a fairly anatomical
So we're going to skip to
level.
the 11-minute mark. Okay, 11-minute mark. That's good enough.
bent.
Oh yeah, he's very intelligent.
By that small object, and
Very
there's a
intelligent.
pattern here that appears to be related to the particular structure that's doing the scattering. And so there's a relationship that, if you understand the rules of optics, we could work backward from that pattern to figure out that we had a single slit here.
Okay, so what he's showing is that he had a laser and he shot the laser at the wall. He puts a slide in front of the beam, and the beam scatters. And so basically the shadow that comes off of this beam is what you say basically reverse engineer nature. They're saying that basically we don't know what a physical object looks like, but what we'll do is we'll shoot light through it, or we'll shoot light through the crystal, and the shadow that the crystal gives off will allow us to do some math to show us what the physical object looks like. Once again, we've already substantiated that this is how it comes about, as technology about reverse engineering nature, things that we already know. But let's continue. I think that we're going to let it play into the 12:30 mark, and then we'll skip to other key points in this video.
Now let's see what happens when we put two slits into the beam. So these are just two slits, both the same width as the original slit in the first slide. And now we can see that there is a different pattern, although it is similar to the first one. So again, there's a central broad band, and it's flanked by fainter bands on either side. But now each of those bands is actually split into a series of dots. So again, that tells us that we've changed the structure here that's doing the scattering, and that changes the diffraction pattern that we see on the wall. But because the structure here is simply a duplicate of the first structure, the overall pattern, the envelope, as it were, of the intensity variation changes. It's just that we see different points of light. And if we go from 2 slits now to 6, then we see that again, we get a similar overall pattern, a sort of central bright band flanked by fainter bands on either side. And again, now they are divided into dots. And the pattern of dots is exactly the same as with the 2 slits, because the spacing between the 6 slits is the same as the spacing between the 2 slits. And that's a point I want you to keep in mind, because we'll come back to talk about that when we talk about crystals and what crystals do, because a crystal is simply a repeating form of matter.
Notice what he said. He said because a crystal is simply a repeating form of matter. What? I am killing you niggas. See, you see how they see it?
Particle.
A crystal is nothing but a repeating form of matter. See, they not Hollywood. This is why they control Hollywood, though, because they know that the vast majority of people who think about crystals, they think about witchcraft. You think about Lord of the Rings. You think about some damn Twilight shit. But these motherfuckers know that a crystal is nothing but order, organized chaos, organized light that carries all this information. All right, that's one thing that you have to understand. I think we're going to let it go to the 13-minute and 20 mark. I think I'm gonna fast forward because there's no reason to hear him, because he's going to bring out his assistant. I want you to hear what he says to his assistant. Okay.
We could then start to think about in interpreting, although I haven't explained to you yet how you do that. But before I do that, we want to then actually grow some crystals of our own. So
now, while he's going to be doing this lecture, he's going to grow some crystals. Remember, we talked about how fast crystals grow. That's why I told you, brother, like a lot of times somebody could be like, oh, well, that brother had a bad heart. It's over time he had a heart attack. No, he could take in the wrong crystals at that moment and immediately have a heart attack. This how fast crystals form. As you've seen, we showed you the video how salt crystals, how fast they form and how large they get. And you wonder why we're at the height of hypertension and osteoporosis, because they know y'all eating crystals, and crystals are what harden your arteries, not some cholesterol or trash that the Blanco been telling you. And that shows you how callous, how insidious and dark he is, because he knows the truth. He's sitting up here in his damn tuxedo in front of all of these other demons and devils, telling them exactly how life works. Let us continue.
Jay Shan, my assistant, is going to come here. And so Jay Shan, he's a novice crystallographer.
Notice what he called them, novice crystallographer. See, they don't call themselves chemists. They don't call themselves, remember, crystallogians. See, are these people pseudo? Is the Blanco pseudo now? No, because you see all this money. You see it's the royal institution. This motherfucker got, these niggas don't dress up in tuxedos to talk pseudo shit. But let the black man come running around here, the black woman in all her glory running around here talking about crystals. You're in a cult. You're in a cult. Get that shit out of my face, Negro. Let me listen to the white man talk about DNA, which he somehow derived from a photo he claimed was from a UFO photo. But I digress. With your small Negro brain and your big nose breathing all the white man's air coming around here telling me about science. All right. Okay. So we're going to go to 1441 right quick. Let's go. Because he's showing you crystallization, how he's crystallizing a protein. Okay, he's doing the same experiment that was conducted in the first video we showed, because this is how they do it. When they vaporize, when water leaves, because water will rotate a crystal, and as it leaves, it forces the crystals around it to start bonding with one another. That's why water is so crucial to this entire process. That's why they know where there's water, there's life, because water builds crystals, brothers and sisters. Now, so let's let this play for a second, all right?
And it will increase the concentration of protein inside the drop to a point where we hope it starts to precipitate out of solution. And when a protein precipitates out of solution, what that means is that the molecules are starting to stick together. They interact with one another rather than interact with the water molecules. And what we hope is that they will aggregate together in a very regular array to give us a protein crystal. So,
to give us a protein crystal. But we hear proteins all the time. Now this Blanco is in some damn, building talking amongst billionaires and elite individuals.
You guys remember I showed you that the protein crystals come from the belly fat of a nasty hog fat. That's where protein crystals come from. Keep that in mind.
Talking about protein crystals. But you ain't never heard this in your biology class. You ain't never heard they nutritionists, they doctors, they holistic practitioners talk about no protein crystals. But we're going to show you how significant this is, and we're going to show you how important, significant this guy is. Just to think you think that they playing, wait till I get done with this video and we chopping it up and analyzing it for what it really is. Okay?
We are almost done with that. I did say he was a novice.
He's playing, but he's not playing. Look at him. And this, like you said, this set you seen in class. You got chemistry models up here, but he not talking chemistry. What's wrong? Where all of the niggas at talking about how niggas be talking pseudo? You see these Blancos suited up. Let's continue because we're going to go to the 17, 18 minute mark. All right. Let's go.
Now, I know it doesn't look like much, but it is a truly significant scientific result. It does look like a horrible smudge. Maybe it's a Rorschach diagram. I'm not quite sure. But what you can see are two things. One, there is a diffraction pattern there. It's not a very regular diffraction pattern, not immediately apparent, but you can see that the beam has been split into different rays, and so it's scattering. So there's a point, a ray here, and a ray here, and these are spread out from the middle. So the audience here is where the X-ray beam came from, and this is the pattern. So Lowry's hypothesis was supported, so it did suggest that X-rays are waves and that crystals could be used as a diffraction grating for them. But as well as showing that there were waves, because you have a pattern here, what that tells you is that the structure within the crystal, because the beam has passed straight through and been scattered off at angles, the structure of the crystal has imprinted itself somehow on the pattern of scattering. And so what you have in this pattern, and when they moved the photographic plate back a bit, they got a slightly better resolved separation of the spots. But there's information in here about the structure of the crystal that they were analyzing.
Okay, so what you have to understand, let me talk to you, brothers and sisters. No, first, I'm going to show you an article, because what you have to understand, now let me talk to you first, and I'm going to show you this article. Because we gotta take some time here and there, because he boring to me. I don't know about y'all, but we got to mix it up a little bit, because I would have been in class like, what'd he say? Somebody had to wake me up. Now, the reality of it is that, remember we talked about how the Blanco woman who plays this benign character, how she's in the background, articulating a lot of this energy and sculpting it and framing it, all right, in the background, giving this esoteric information, because she's the one who can get closest to the energy, because we know that this realm is ruled by the feminine principle. With that being said, remember we brought up about seminoplasma, how the vast majority of the semen is made up of seminoplasma, only 2 to 3%. Even though it's about 5 to 6 million sperm cells that get, in a man's ejaculation, that only makes up 2 to 3% of that ejaculate. The rest of it is seminal plasma. Why is this important? Because, you know, plasma is electrons, the very thing that they aim and shoot x-rays at, that bounce off radiation, right? And send information. Remember, we told you that they knew this. Occult leaders like Maria Orsic, all right, messing with Hitler. They knew about all of these things, and they knew that in order to garner a lot of the real energy, they had to get close to the carriers of the energy that was produced by the black woman, called the black man or black child. Right, grows up to be a black man, and then obviously he, gets into a relationship, traditionally speaking, with a black woman, and they create a super bomb or a super crystal, another star seed, another carbon baby. Now, she needed that information. She needed that light to be in her body so that can wake her up to her psychic abilities and stuff. The Blanco woman takes it in other ways now. We all hear about the stuff, that many dark practices and sexual rituals in the background. But back then, before they can really get a hold of us in mass and get, you know what I'm saying, and get familiar with us, this was the way that they were acquiring it, through, you know, sexual magic one-on-one. Many times they were going about colonizing areas. Okay, let's show you an article just to show you that this is the case, because we showing you that, like he told you, when these crystals interact with one another, they let off light and they release light because you hold and you absorb x-rays. As he told you, remember, x-rays come from the sun. So you absorbing these x-rays. So when you shoot out your energy, when you releasing this energy and it get hot through sex, you also releasing heat energy, heat crystals on that woman, and she's giving you back crystals. This is an exchange of cellular data. This is an exchange of ancient data. This is why sexual energy was always seen in such a way to where it had to be guarded, because it was an exchange of Akashic records or Akashic energy or dark matter or dark energy. This was the way to exchange energy. How do we know this? Let's look up an article. We'll show. We ain't got time for this. I'm telling y'all, man, these Blancos already knew this type of occult magic. All right, let's share our screen. The most mysterious cells in our bodies don't belong to us. Some 24 years ago, let's give you the article. A story by Catherine J. Wu, The Atlantic. Okay. All right. Some 24 years ago, Deanna Bianchi peered into a microscope at a piece of human thyroid and saw something that instantly gave her goosebumps. The sample had come from a woman who was chromosomally XX. But through the lens, Bianchi saw the unmistakable glimmer of Y chromosomes, dozens and dozens of them. Clearly, Bianchi told me, part of her thyroid was entirely male. Okay. The reason Bianchi suspected was pregnancy. Years ago, the patient had carried a male embryo whose cells at some point wandered out of the womb. They'd ended up in his mother's thyroid and almost certainly a bunch of other organs too, and taking on the identities and functions of the female cells that surrounded them so they could work in synchrony. Bianchi, now the director of Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, was astonished. Her thyroid had been entirely remodeled by her son's cells, she said, a child that was not even born outside of the womb. So you see, this crystal information becomes a part of you. When you have sex with these Blanco women and stuff like that, until you wake up to understanding exactly what this crystal transfer is all about, you don't know that you're doing this. You don't know that you're giving up your ancient records. You don't know that you're doing that. You see what I'm saying? But this is very important for you to know. And this is what they were conducting, and we showed you that was the truth of what they were doing in this campaign. We gave an example of the mighty German nation during its height of superiority, and then what we saw was when we pulled back the veil, we saw that the vast majority of the women who were having sexual relations with black men were German women, the ones who were supposed to be the most convinced of white superiority, right? So something ain't making no sense, all right? All right, so we're showing you, right, that they know about this, that how the significance of the exchange, how you could exchange information before they could come up with the technology to extract crystals on their own. They had to do it in the most rudimentary fashion, right, which led to all of the chaos, which we could never really figure out. We was like, why is this Blanco so violent, running around here doing what they do? We could never figure it out or put our finger on it. And now we know exactly what it is. But let's get back into this video to finish some things up, right? We got some real key points and stuff. So we're going to go to the 1841 minute mark. Hold on, let me cue it. Hold on 1 second. All right. So I think we're already there, really. So let's get into it.
Now, this wasn't the most regular pattern. It turns out there were good reasons initially for choosing copper sulfate, but although it is a nice regular array, the atoms are not arranged in copper sulfate in a very symmetric pattern. So they then chose a crystal of zinc blend, which is zinc sulfide, and from the appearance of these beautiful crystals, you can tell that it does look like the atoms are lined up in a cubic type of formation. And that certainly turns out to be the case. And if you take one of these crystals and you orientate it properly in the beam, then you get a much nicer pattern.
So when you take the crystals and orient them, you get a beam, and then you can change up. You will receive different information. That's why I told you, as water rotates molecules, it changes up its orientation in space. This is called isomerism in chemistry. You change up the structure of a molecule in space, you're going to get a different reaction that's going to change up the properties of that crystal. It's going to then change up the information that that crystal is relaying just by its orientation, as light has to hit it in order as it receives, transmits information. That's very key to something that they've known for a very long time. All right. So I think we need to skip to the 28-minute mark. Let's see where it's at. 28-minute mark. Okay. Hold on 1 second. All right.
3 or 4 wavelengths, then you do not get any scattering. And so Bragg's law places a severe restriction on the scattering of the planes. But it also tells you interesting information about the spacing between those planes. And also, we've just looked at one horizontal set of planes in the crystal, but there are many other ways of looking at crystals.
And I told you, layers and crystals. Obviously, we told you that they communicate through signs and symbols. This is obviously the Tetris game too, as well. I told you they knew about these things, right? But you can see the layout of the Tetris game right here. But this is the only way they're going to communicate with you, through signs and symbols and stuff. But continue.
The horizontal planes, but you can equally imagine that the atoms line up in a completely different way, and so we have an angled set of planes here. But you can look at the same thing again, and you have another set of angled planes, each with different spacings. And what Lawrence realized was the spots in a diffraction pattern are simply all the various different reflections that are allowed by his law coming off the interior of the crystal. And we can maybe get an idea of that just if we look in 3 dimensions. So here is a atomic lattice. But if we
so we're going to skip to the 33-minute mark. Make sure. Okay. Now, see, this is sodium chloride. This is table salt. Now, from the shadows, you can see this is what they come up with. They'll look at the shadows, and then they'll draw out the geometric earth shapes, the geometric shapes and patterns that they get from the shadows. To know about the light, they use the dark. To know about the light, they use the dark. Okay?
In the same places, but some of them change in intensity, in darkness, and this was an early hint that it's not just the positions of the spots that are important, but the intensities are as well. Now, initially, they had mostly just been working on the positions of the spots, which told them about the angles of the planes, and it was by working out the angles of the planes that they could figure out where the atoms were. But this was an early indication of a more sophisticated analysis that was to follow it. So this was the structure of sodium chloride that they worked out. They published it in 1913, and it's even then, although they worked hard on it, he wasn't entirely sure of himself. It was on this rather slender and indirect evidence that I assigned the structure in a paper read to the Royal Society in 1913. Fortunately, further investigation established its correctness. Now, It was a major breakthrough. This was the first time that people had seen the interior of matter, had seen the atomic arrangements inside a piece of crystalline matter. However, it didn't please everybody. And it took the chemists, actually, in particular, a long time to get on board with crystallography. Or
see, at this time, it took a long time for the chemists to get on board because, see, the occult was only teaching the Blancos a certain type. They was only teaching them regular chemistry. So this is the reaction of the chemist. I told y'all I was finna bring y'all to work. This when the Blanco was fighting over himself. This was what the wars was about. You think World War I and World War II was about oil and all that bullshit? No, it was the elites fighting over how to use the crystals. They had to convince these motherfuckers. The chemists like, nah, man, that ain't how it is. Shit ain't made up of crystals. Same thing niggas doing now. For those who know, the crystallologists who know about crystals, we fighting against our community in order to let them know how the world is built. But see, it's easier with them because, see, they basically had, you know, some of our people on their team too disclosing this information, as well as obviously a large apparatus behind them in order to help bring about the artificial matrix. See, and you know, the ones who were the most influential obviously had the most money. You know, the Royal Society was behind this. It's 1912 and 1913. And you know what this also hints at, what I'm telling you guys before too as well, what this hints at, like we told you, this is the rush for the crystals, or the gold rush. Remember, gold is nothing but another crystal. This is the gold rush. Them crackers found out exactly what these crystals were. When they decided what they were, they knew where the most of them were going to reside, in the tropical regions. You see what I'm saying? We talk about the Congo and those crystals and stuff. So they'll take those crystals and they'll process them, reverse engineer them in order to find out more about ancient energy. Okay? But this is the process that the Blanco went through internally to decide what ideological stance he was going to take. And there was some who were traditionalists, but that wasn't going to work because the occult knew that they were the ones driving this motherfucker. And pretty soon, as we gonna see, they eventually capitulated. But let's continue.
Of them, at least. So Bragg was writing as late as 1927. In sodium chloride, there appears to be no molecules represented by sodium chloride. The chemists had expected to see molecules of an atom of sodium and an atom of chloride stuck together.
See, he's saying this chemist right here, this chemist right here, hold on. This dude right here, the one who replies, not him, not Brad, but this guy right here, he's like, you know, I'm expecting they like he said, they're expecting to see molecules. I want to see molecules and shit. You know, like people, because they see flesh and blood, because they only exist at a certain level of light, they're like, no, we flesh and blood. So of course, this is what the people who wasn't on the inside understood. They're like, no, I want to see molecules sticking together. They're like, no, bitch, it's crystals. I know it's hard for you to wrap your mind around, bitch, but eventually you go wake up to this is that this crystal work, okay?
Quality of number of sodium and chloride atoms is arrived at by a chessboard pattern of these atoms. It is a result of geometry and not a pairing of the atoms.
So he's saying it's a result. This dude right here who's in crystallography, Bragg, who's leading this movement, he's saying it's a result of geometry or earth shapes or crystals coming together, bonding. This ain't no motherfucking molecules, bitch, sticking together like we done showed you in them damn books. He said, you better get your head out the fucking clouds, bitch. So this is what this dude say, because he in disbelief. All right, let's let him continue.
A British chemist by the name of Henry Armstrong took exception to this. He got rather cross. And he wrote in the pages of Nature, this statement is absurd to the nth degree, not chemical cricket. Chemistry is neither check.
Hold on.
It is 1927. In sodium chloride, there appears to be no molecules represented by sodium chloride. The chemists had expected to see molecules of an atom of sodium and an atom of chloride stuck together. The equality of number of sodium and chloride atoms is arrived at by a chessboard pattern of these atoms.
But no, hold on, let me get this down. What the heck?
It is a result of geometry and not a pairing of the atoms. Now,
why is this?
A British chemist by the name of Henry Armstrong took exception to this. He got rather cross. And he wrote in the pages of Nature, this statement is absurd to the nth degree, not chemical cricket. Chemistry.
So what I want to have to go back, because what he didn't read is he's like, is it the time that he said it is time that chemists took charge of chemistry once more and protected neophytes against the worship of false gods. Woo! So you see, they had the same reaction. But see, these niggas, they knew what they was on. They like, he's pseudo. He knew that they were pseudo. But they sitting up here ostracizing these individuals, talking about they over there on some pseudo shit, worshiping false gods and shit. And these motherfuckers was on to what they needed to be on to. All right. And so basically what we finna do, we're gonna go to the 46-minute mark because we're getting close over things. That I it's a couple more points that I want to make, but I'm finna say that for later on too as well, maybe in the Q&A. But we're gonna go to the 46-minute mark.
So as long as you can crystallize it, you can solve the structure of it.
As long as you can crystallize it, you can solve the structure of it. So what do we understand from that powerful statement this demon right here is talking about? You may say, well, hey, well, you don't know him. I know what he's into. See, if I'm disclosing this shit, can't y'all just trust me that I know what these people are into? So he's saying that as long as you can crystallize it, you can solve it. He hasn't crystallized us, crystallogians. He showed you in these articles that his x-rays can't get through to you. Why you think they have so much trouble with their technology with facial recognition and all that different shit? We absorb the light. We don't give it back. They have to work off a shadow, but in order for you to get a shadow is me bouncing light back. They don't get nothing back. We just absorb this shit. They can't get an idea what the fuck makes us or ticks us. So they have to crystallize us. They got to reshape the food so that it crystallizes us, so that they can figure out what we are. That's why Henry out of Lax provided such a huge push for them. Remember, we disclosed that information in the book by what was her name? What was her name? I think Rebecca Scoop. And the book was the Immortal Life of Henry out of Lax. Remember, she talked about how the crystal glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase A was peculiar and specific and unique to the so-called African American population. So that shows you that the most important crystal is a human crystal, and they were putting through constant efforts to figure out what you are. All of the eugenics movement was about figuring out what your crystal makeup and how to destroy you. That's what this is all about. And it's not going to change. Period. You have to understand that.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go. So let's continue because he's going to say something very important.
You need to go pick your own, brother. Choose one. You get a couple for EMF removal.
So the application of the Fourier methods was allowed crystallographers, allowed the Braggs initially to use the positional information and the fact that the intensity of the spots varied in different directions in order to calculate the.
Oh, make me some art. Make me a piece of art.
The very first published by Lawrence Bragg. This is from 1929 from dioxide. Still.
I want a piece of art.
Much more complicated than sodium chloride. So this is a section through the electron density map. You can see the contours. So here's strong electron density. This is kind of medium. And here is the that Bragg built into that electron density map and solved for dioxide. And so through the 20s and 30s, they showed that they could apply the technique to more and more complex molecules.
Yeah.
And the chemists didn't all listen to Armstrong. And this is beautiful work done by one of Britain's sort of most celebrated female scientists, Dorothy Hodgkin, or Crowfoot as she was, before her marriage. This is the structure of penicillin that was solved during World War II and published shortly afterwards. And this, she published in the late 1950s, is the structure of vitamin B12, a massive molecule, and it was the biggest molecule to have been solved at that time. So a single molecule.
So all your molecules, your B12, when you're looking up these things on the internet, brothers, this is they got this through crystals. They looked at it, by using X-ray, diffraction techniques, looking at crystals. This is how they did it. Let's let it continue.
Over 100 atoms, and so the technique.
Yeah, grab the video at top says.
Application of the Fourier method, which had been pioneered by the Braggs. And crystallography is now simply an embedded part of chemistry. So
key point, crystallography is now an embedded part of chemistry. Mission accomplished by the occult. See what I'm saying, brothers and sisters? So while we the only ones still struggling left behind as a people. We the ones looking at it, that molecules, thinking molecules and blood stick together because it's sticky. Blanco like, no, bitch. keep your small brain over there. This is by design. We weren't thinking small because we were, this was all, this is what we intended to do. We thought small because this is what the Blanco conditioned us to think like. All right. So now a lot of us got to get out of the Stockholm syndrome, loving this prison mentality, and get out here and do the real work by making sure that we make sure all of our crystals are at the right level so that we can get to the next level. All right.
As well as telling us about material science, it's now a regular routine tool of chemistry. The database has over 500,000 crystal structures in it, and 40,000 new structures are added every.
He said we got over 500,000 crystal structures in here, and we add 40,000 every new year. You want to know how they do it? Wait till the end of this video. You're going to see how they make their new crystals and shit. But I've been telling you guys this, how the Blanco been bringing in new energies, new beings and stuff by crystal formation. Because you know that this is the nature of this universe. Okay? So let's continue. All right. Hold on 1 second. So, yeah, let's go to the 52-minute mark. We're going to wrap this up.
Means of really getting to grips.
Yes, I love quartz too, sis.
They could do. And
opal.
Oh, hold on. It's the 57-minute mark. I'm sorry. 57-minute
mark.
Opal
isn't really a crystal, but it's really good.
Looks like a bacterial cell wall, and so we can see how the enzyme works, how it catalyzes pulling apart this molecule. So crystallography gives us incredible molecular atomic level insights into the workings of biology. And it has just gone from strength to strength. That result was from the 1960s. These days, we now we have much better kit, but we're basically doing the same thing. We are still growing crystals, we are still collecting X-ray diffraction patterns, and we are still solving structures. The kit's a bit better, so rather than a Crookes tube, which is what the Bragg started out with, we've got one of these. This is a particle accelerator. It nestles in the Oxfordshire countryside.
Particle accelerator, brothers and sisters. Particle accelerator. The diamond light source. So you think these Blancos running around in these tuxedos? You thought that Blanco didn't have no money? This where he work at. They smash particles together in an effort to create new crystals. But see, he tells you he's smashing particles together to make new elements. See, and so you think the Blanco out there being harmless until you realize everything is made up of crystals. So you know, this is the most expensive scientific establishment Britain has ever put money into. But yeah, you would have somebody like Rashad Jamal or even, Nature Boy. You might not agree with them, but like we said, any one of our intellectual trailblazers, any one of them talk anything about anything like this, they get ostracized and they get, characterized as being pseudo, or they on that crystal cult. What type of madness is that? But yet this is what the Blancos doing in a tuxedo and a bow tie, right? And you better believe it probably was $300 a damn plate just to eat at this motherfucking convention, or wherever the hell it was. And you got distinguished guests. This is the Royal Society, brothers and sisters. Okay, and this is what they're doing. And so when you see situations like this,
guys, let's get over there and support the brother for the next 45 minutes.
Because if you don't,
we'll be back over here in 45 minutes for part 2.
All these things like we talked about will forever go over your head because
come on, meet me over
you
here,
don't
guys.
understand the nature of the individuals who. So all this is important. Like we watched the video, we want to wrap that up. We wanted to show you exactly how powerful this is, this X-ray crystallography, this science, and how it's used for them to be able to understand anything or everything that they have known up until this point about matter, which is in solid, liquid, gas, and plasma form. All of it bonds in crystal formation. They've known this for the longest time. Whether or not you want to catch up to it makes no difference to them. They're building billion-dollar facilities, brothers and sisters. They don't care if you know about it or not. They forcing your brothers and sisters to dig up those crystals in the Congo because they know that you don't know the power of crystals. You're like, oh, he doing it for his cell phones. No, he not. You think he give a fuck about a cell phone? I invite you to watch the movie Deja Vu with Denzel Washington and Paula Patton, where he's playing a detective and then he's a secret government agency wants him to help them in solving a case, which is what's the likelihood of that, right? A detective being, helping out a secret agency, and they show him this technology, and then all of a sudden he gets a little suspicious about the technology, and what he does, he aims a laser through the technology and it hits Paula Patton's character's wall, and she looks at it. He says, "This ain't no technology. You guys in about 45 minutes ago. You're seeing what's happening in real time." Then all of a sudden they got to start mayo-splaining and saying, "Oh, well, yeah, it is." But what the thing is that we found out with light, yeah,